So Charlie, tell me about your first reaction to hearing the news that the six Jesuits and their two lay collaborators were murdered here.
It was rather strange because I had just gotten off a plane from Vietnam. I was at Georgetown at the time, and I was working on exchange programs between Vietnam and Georgetown. And as I got off the plane, I called back to the office, and they said that the president of Georgetown wanted me to immediately get involved in this tragedy that had happened in El Salvador, that the six Jesuits and their two co-workers had been killed. So I didn't know any of the men. I knew a little bit about El Salvador, but not too much. But I was fortunate to have a number of folks that could immediately bring me up to speed on the issues. And I remember one of the Salvadorans who came to see me was Ruben Zamora, who's a legend here in El Salvador, and he was in exile. He'd left the country under threat to his life. And I spent a lot of time with him, but the one who really made me understand a lot better what had happened was John Sobrino, who came to Georgetown. This would have been 4 or 5 days after this happened. And he had been in Thailand, or he would have been one of the ones martyred, because he was very close to Currie. The two of them were inseparable. And John Sobrino talked about the significance of their lives, and obviously he was deeply moved. He's moved to this day because of this tragedy. I remember his describing these men and women as human beings trying to be human, Christians trying to be Christians, Jesuits trying to be Jesuits, and Salvadorans trying to be Salvadorans. So a very simple kind of thing. And that was one of the notes from the beginning, that these folks were very real. They were not some plastic martyr or saint. They were very real people, very much like ourselves, who were deeply committed to what they're doing. And it was very early on that I think the significance of these folks, to me, has been the incredible commitment that they made in their lives. And then I got to know more about the other key Salvadoran figures, Archbishop Romero, the same kind of total commitment to what he was doing, and then the 4 American churchwomen. And again, all of these folks are very ordinary people. They could be sitting here talking with us, and we'd feel very much at home as they would. So the level of commitment in general, but specifically commitment to the poor and the powerless here in El Salvador.
So when was your initial visit here, and just maybe that was right after the killing? So
yes,
that must have been a very unique experience from landing to coming. So just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I came down here with a delegation, about 10 people, including Senator Jim Jeffords from Vermont. And very importantly, there were 6 or 7 people on that delegation who were deeply involved in El Salvador. 4 or 5 of them were very good friends of Archbishop Romero. They knew the church women, they knew the Jesuits. So it was an instant immersion experience for me. I mean, even on the way down, and so I was able to get into the situation very quickly. And we were met at the airport by the ambassador, and I remember being whisked into the ambassador's limousine with the senator. And you had the van in front and the van in back with the Uzis or the AK-47s hanging out the window. And the ambassador saying, "Isn't this fun?" And I said, "This is rather strange." They were driving 70, 75 miles an hour down this highway, and obviously it's the ambassador. It's not, and there's military all over the place. But that was a first thing. But then when we got here, just meeting all of the key people. Of course, coming here to the Rose Garden, roses weren't there at that point, but everything was pretty much the way it was that night. The only thing different, the bodies had been obviously removed, but everything else was the blood on the grass, the blood on the walls, the utter destruction of the Romero Center, you know, this wanton destruction. They used flamethrowers to destroy painting of Archbishop Romero. They set fire to the computers. It was just, random destruction. But then the most important thing at that point, besides just spending some time up here and contemplating, you know, what had happened and who these folks were, we very early on got to know the key players. We spent time with the president, Cristiani, who had been a Georgetown graduate, same class as Bill Clinton. We met with the two top military folks, General, or at the time, Colonel Cepeda and Colonel Ponce. I remember very graphically first time meeting them, and we met in the room where I found out later the decision had been made to kill these folks. And of course they were in total denial. There was nothing, the military could never have done this. And the military, or the folks who did the killing, they left signs all over the place, FMLN, that was the guerrilla group. Well, it was impossible for the guerrillas to have done that because the campus itself is surrounded by the military. There's a big democracy tower a few hundred yards away where the military had observation posts. And this campus it would be like Georgetown being within a mile of the Pentagon, West Point, the CIA, the FBI, because all those agencies are within a mile of the UCA campus. So it was preposterous to suggest that the guerrillas had done this and the military knew nothing about it because there was nothing in their logbooks. So it was a pretty preposterous story, which was perpetuated for about a month. And finally, in fact, while we were down here, President Cristiani finally admitted that it was the military. And then the story was, well, it was just a few bad apples. It wasn't an institutional problem. And so we got to know a lot of the Salvadoran leaders. It was interesting. We'd go to meetings, and the military would all over the place. And as we'd walk into these meetings with different groups, the military would take great delight in hitting us with the butts of their rifles, and just to show that they were in charge. It was kind of a infantile demonstration of machismo, I guess. But the big thing, we really got to know who the players were, and we began, I remember at night we'd come together and say, okay, now what did we learn today? And one of the big things, what is the truth? It was so very difficult. You're getting so many different versions of what happened, what the situation was in the country. And but it was clear that the Jesuits had a major impact, and we began to realize the significance of what they were trying to do here. And as I mentioned, we also began to learn more about, at least I did, learn more about Archbishop Romero and the 4 American churchwomen. And all of these folks deeply committed to doing something about the poor and powerless in El Salvador.